I don't think they're legit. They keep sending
I don't even
messages.
have an Amazon account and I still get it.
Madam President, at this time, we had everyone from the waiting room into the meeting,
All right, perfect.
and we just started recording.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So at 7:01, please call the City of Tonawanda Council to order. Please call the roll.
Newman,
Here.
Cameron,
Here?
Rautenstrau,
Here,
Mylum,
Here.
Cook.
Here. Mr. Clerk, if you could please read the special meeting notice.
Special meeting notice for Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, to the members of the Common Council, City of Tonawanda, pursuant to the power vested in me by Article 2, Division 3, Section 2.048 of the City Charter of the City of Tonawanda, adopted January 1st, 1998. I hereby call a special meeting of the Common Council of the City of Tonawanda to be held virtually via Zoom on the 23rd day of March, 2021 at 7 p.m. Said meeting is being called for the purpose of voting on a resolution regarding the recommendations made by the Police Reform Committee and for such other business as may properly come before the meeting. Jenna Cook, Council President.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Trying to pull up the resolution too. Okay, so just to segue into this, I know we received the comprehensive report from the Police Reform Committee the other day, or today it was updated, but we received it the other day. Oh, thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Rautenstrau was our liaison, so thank you, Sean, for getting that date corrected. And I know we received the resolution from the city attorney, you know, and he had the council to decide what recommendations, if any, that we choose to adopt. So I first want to kind of open it up to the floor to the council. Thoughts on what we received, questions?
I think, yeah, first of all, Madam President, thank you. I think in reading the recommendations in the, well, first of all, the amount of times that they met, the amount of hours that they met, I think, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the committee. The document that we received is evidence of many hours of work and research and reaching out to the community, and what was produced and given to us really, I think, shows the seriousness with which they took the task. So that's the first thing. I don't know of a way to prove what's in here. I don't know, just the one thing that I am kind of concerned about is the additional funding for hiring more officers. That is, you know, we'd like to have a police officer and a fireman and a doctor and everybody on every street corner, but you know, we're in pretty tough budget times right now. And my question is, if we pass this, is this a route to hiring 4 new officers? Is this a mandate on hiring those?
If it's included in the resolution that we accept that recommendation, yes, because as I understand, the mayor will then have to send a certification to the governor along with the resolution that we've adopted.
So, and when it says hiring 4 more officers, I believe we have 28 officers at this time. Is that correct?
I believe the chief is joining us here as well. Chief Strasburg, are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Can you answer that question about your force?
Yes, there's 28 counting me.
28, including me. So would it be, is this recommendation to put that number to, 31 officers, including a chief? Or
So it'd be 32.
replacement as, I just want to get it so that I have exactly what everybody's thinking. I don't know if this is attrition with impending retirements or if this is adding to the base.
I think if I can kind of speak to that, I think the whole idea was to add an additional person per shift based on the additional duties tasked with them to make sure they go to enough, the training that they're recommending and everything else. I think from the standpoint of the committee, we were tasked with gathering the information. We're getting the recommendations from the community and seeing what they want. And this is the application of it. Obviously, it's up to the council to decide that. Lindsay kind of made this a little more comprehensive, rewrote this up. And I don't know if the verbiage is enough that it's considering allocating of up to 4 law enforcement officers overtime through funding and joint services. It does leave it a little open to find different alternatives, but I'm going to acquiesce with our city attorney, Mike Rua, on, what it actually means, if there's a better way to phrase that, to put that into the wording in the acceptance of the resolution, or if that's part of the resolution that we just aren't able to accept given our economic state. I think I said it before, I think it's a little bit unrealistic to look at this a couple months into the already agreed upon budget year and decide that we have to put $500,000 more in it. I don't think it's realistic to be able to do that. Is it something we can do over time with funding, with additional aid? Yeah. But I think, to an extent, it gets kind of pushed back on the state. If we're committing to this and we have to do it on our own, then obviously we can't. If we change the wording that, we get enough mandates from the state, from the governor, that are forced upon us with no additional funding, then it's an exercise in futility to go forward with it. And like you said, to quote that, we'd love to have more officers. We'd love to have more firemen and more frequent garbage pickup, but we're tied to the budget that we have and the amount that our residents are willing to foot the bill for.
So Bill, a first year officer would make, what is it, 62? That's the base rate?
Contract currently has them at 62,246. And again, when we figure benefits using all of the benefits included, it's a safe number to use of right about 99,000. So
Okay.
per officer.
And then times by 4.
Right. So you're looking at about 400,000 budget impact. If we even were able to hire and train 4 officers at a time. Right. So that's going to be spread out over, because we have to, the city does a very good job with their training. I'm not sure we would, we'd have to look at that, and then the cost of the academy, and the length of time. That's the first year officer rate. The academy rate is lower. So, if it were to something that we would actually start hiring now, there would be academy rate for a period of time.
Okay. Now, Jim, can you scroll back up to number 1, please?
Sure.
So the first recommendation was additional funding for officers training. The city will consider and pursue additional opportunities, grants, and sources to assist in additional training in mental health, police equipment, and crisis emotional training. The city will also advocate for funding for this additional training and request New York State to help in this change. I mean, do we all agree that we can accept this recommendation?
I'm all for number 1. Yes.
I am as well.
Madam President, I'm just going to run out a copy of the recommendations over to Mike and Brittany.
Okay, thank you. And Chief, in your opinion, what additional training can we advocate for?
Well, if they're looking for more mental health training, that's something I'd have to look into to see what's out there. Right now, Yeah, excuse me, every officer trained in crisis intervention training, which is more than I think any other department in Western New York has. We've made it a priority and gotten the entire patrol division certified in that. I believe there's one or two new hires that haven't received it yet. But as far as any specifics, I would have to do some research to see what's out there and what we could look at.
Okay,
In my world, it all comes down to, we do as much as we can in-house. If you advocate for more training, it's an overtime issue. It's money. It's still money. That's what it's going to come down to. That's the only way I can send them to any more training than what we're doing now.
Chief, if I can ask, is it worth
Any more
asking
training? Oh, I'm sorry.
more refreshers on the training, updates? Is there, I know you kind of do a lot of this in-house and it's done, but is it realistic to think it could be done more frequently, or is that still a heavy impact and a heavy amount of overtime? Or is it kind of an intangible?
You could do as little or as much as you wanted. So if it was just a little more, obviously the cost would be less. The more you do, the more it would cost. We're pretty much at our max on what we can do with switching shifts and doing it in-house without that overtime. Right now we're trying to implement a reality-based training, and we've gotten 4 officers through it, but 2 of our officers have to be the trainers, and then to get others off their shift to get it, it's a 16-hour course, has been a heavy lift, and we've been trying to do it for a couple years, and we don't want to keep putting it off. So right now we're really bogged down with that, trying to make it work. But again, it's just, I can't give you an exact number. It would be what kind of training are we actually looking at, what's out there, and then who needs it? Is it the entire department, just the patrol division? It's kind of an open-ended question that I just can't answer tonight.
You kind of answered one of my questions, Chief. I was curious how the operation was, if you actually had officers that, received training to become trainers and then pass that training on to your officers. Kind of touched on that. Is that how it works?
Yes, right now we have 8 certified instructors. So they have to go to instructor development, which is a week-long school. Then they're certified by DCJS in the state. So anything they train, the state recognizes them. And then 2 of our officers are instructors out at the academy. That one keeps them fresh with learning new things and staying on top of everything. And they can bring that stuff back to the department.
okay.
I mean, I have some recommendations on training. It's not the mental health stuff, but some of these things are hot topics today's day. And you might already be aware of the stuff. I don't know. But and this is a source from the Child Advocacy Center. And I know our PD does work with the Child Advocacy Center. I know racial equity training is one, sensitivity training, specifically sexual assault and domestic violence victims, and gender care training. So those are some of the hot topics currently. They're connected, obviously, with their residents.
Now, Chief? Oh, go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say it's worthwhile mentioning in talking to the chief and talking to Lieutenant Levy about this. A lot of these things are things that are integrated into their training to become accredited. So these are proactive things that come with the accreditation that they've been following. Am I understanding that correctly, Chief?
Yes. So that's why the pool, it's really limited on what we're able to do outside, because there's so much that's required on a yearly basis that basically, we just have to keep doing. And it doesn't leave a whole lot of time. Councilman Newman, one of the trainings we did do was a diversity training. I was able to get it. It was an online course. It took like an hour, but for $100, I was able to get the program for a month, and then every officer in the department had to go through it. That's how we're trying to be creative. Would it be better to be an in-person school? But again, to get 27 or 28 people through that, it's a big lift. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at to get this additional training. But again, that's difficult too, because a lot of stuff online is extremely expensive. And until you actually purchase it and view it, you're not even sure how good it is. So we are trying, but that's the avenue we've kind of been looking at, trying to keep as much as we can in-house.
Now, Chief, did you see the recommendations at any point, and were you in agreement and to move forward with these recommendations for a resolution? Or was it the first time we saw it, you saw it too?
Yeah, like a week ago was when I got the copies.
Okay.
I think everybody else did. We did that on purpose. I really took a hands-off approach to this, and the reason being was I didn't want anybody to think that I had the influence, and that's why, you know, it went in this direction. This committee did all the work. My hat's off to how much time they put into it, but this came directly from them with no influence from the police department.
Perfect.
Lieutenant Levy was a liaison, which was part of the committee, but again, I just didn't want it to come out that, well, you know, I wrote this report and of course it's positive because it was my doing. I had nothing to do with this. This was all the committee and all the work they did.
Okay. So, Mike and Brittany, so for number one, and I'll have the clerk, you know, call the roll on that. For the additional training, would it be suffice if we just put in the resolution continuing training, you know, as per our accreditation, or?
Well, Jenna, the whole purpose of this executive order is the governor wanted to see a plan. So you would put down something that the council hereby approves additional training for handling mental suspects that have mental disabilities, or diversity training, or the specific training. They want some specific, because they want you to implement this plan.
Okay. But we're already, as the chief said, they've already taken the racial equality training. And-
Right, well then that wouldn't be something we would
Right.
approve as our additional reform plans, because we already do it.
Right.
But possibly sensitivity training, you know, gender identification.
Gender, right.
Implied bias is the training that I'm really looking at now.
That's it.
I'd like to see us do more training in, or try to find something that addresses that training.
And I think, you know, as a matter of, you know, quantifying it and put it into policy that, you know, they're going to do it. How often? I think that might come down to it too. What's realistic option to properly rotate the 28 officers through the training, you know, biannually every several years to ensure that everybody's covered. I think, you know, I kind of want to look at it as, hey, we can say we're going to do this additional training or that additional training, but I wonder if we need to add, you know, within what kind of time frame or what kind of rotation period to ensure that it's updated and that all people are included in it. Does that make sense?
Did we get a time frame that these needed to be, if we were to go with opting in for additional training? Was there a time frame given in any of the original paperwork? I
There
didn't
was
see
no
any in this
time,
one.
there was no time
No.
frame in the original executive order.
Okay,
So whether you train one time or every year or biannually or whatever, it's all up to you. The governor just wanted to see a reform plan, and he left the specific to each municipality. So if you want to say we're going to have additional implied bias training, that could be one course, one time for everybody, or it could be annually.
So for recommendation number one, additional training for racial equality, I heard sensitivity training annually. And can we add as the chief sees fit?
I think we should put something as the chief and the, I don't know how you want to wordsmith this, but as the events dictate, because in the future, we may be looking, I mean, we have to talk about things that could be occurring that we're not even planning for yet. So
I agree.
if you put something in there that's a little more general, and addresses that this is going to change over time. But that this plan is flexible enough to adapt over time and envelop the training that is needed by, I don't even know. I mean, I'm trying to say it's things that are coming in the future that we're not planning for yet. But I think we should put something in there that notes that we understand that change will be coming and that this is flexible enough to address that.
I agree.
So it could be just a sentence that says something to the effect of, the training plan will be reflective of
Current
events in the
situations.
community. Yeah, events in the community, demographics in the community, and changes that have not yet occurred. Something in that vein.
Current trends or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Just
perfect.
so that
They updated in current trends of sensitive learning.
Kind of leaves the door open that we're willing to continue to train, we're not going to be set in stone what we're going to train for, but we're willing to adapt, with our
Absolutely.
community.
Yeah.
That's very good. I like it.
Can I add something quick?
Chief, what do you think?
So here was, I'd like to get Mr. Rowe's opinion on this. So currently, by accreditation standards, we have to have 21 hours. Each officer has to have 21 hours a year of training. Most go way beyond that. But would it be better to do a resolution so that you don't box us into anything? Just saying the council is committed to continuing education and we mandate that our officers receive 30 hours a year of training. Then depending on what comes up or what training are deemed important, we set a standard that's higher than accreditation, and then all that flexibility is built in to meet the issues that may come up in 1, 2, or 5 years down the road. I don't know if that's too generic, but that's why.
No, I think that kind of raises the bar, and I think it sounds great.
I think that's the best way to do it, is instead of mandating specific training, just indicate that you're going to increase the training for each officer up to 30 hours a year. Is it a year?
Yeah, a year.
Up to 30 from up to 30 hours a year. So you're instituting new training, and then it will be up to the chief to decide what training is necessary. So just a resolution increasing the requirement for police officers to have training up to 30 hours a year. That could be our resolution.
That's great.
I like that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, you have that, right, Mike?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay,
One.
and then, perfect, okay. So then number 2, the hiring of more officers.
I don't
I'm
think there's
sorry.
any way to really word that without committing to the expense of hiring more officers.
Yeah.
I don't know how we can pursue that when we're limited by the budget that we have, without additional state aid. We just can't pass that along to our residents unless there's a need arise. I mean, if things escalate into our city where there's riots and trouble and problems that are related to diversity, that are related to our community, that's something we'll have to address at a time, but I don't think that's actually the case, based on the feedback that we got and what we see on a daily basis.
I do want to make a point
okay.
though, I'm sorry, Madam President.
No, you're good.
I just wanted to make the point that we will be, John, I agree with you, everything you just said. But I think we may want to think about this and keeping in mind that we are expecting the population in the city to grow over the next few years. But, the apartments.
Maybe preface it based on it, to consider it with the growth of population.
Yeah.
Keep a proper
Can-
ratio of officers in relation to the population, like something to that effect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
per capita.
Can we put, or dependent
do
on
that.
state funding?
Yeah,
No,
I think so, Jenna.
no, Madam President, you can't subject this to state funding. This
Okay.
This is an unfunded state mandate. Whatever you adopt, you must do. And therefore, like hiring individuals is probably not something you should adopt as your plan, because you are committing to hire. Right now, there's no time limit. At some point, the state may come back and say, okay, we've got everybody's plan. We want it done within a year. All of a sudden, you'll be hiring 4 officers. So
Which might,
you can't make it part of your plan. You can always hire anytime you want.
Right.
So if things change, you always have that ability. But whatever
But I
you
mean-
say in this plan, you must implement.
Okay.
I
Okay.
guess to that effect, I mean, can we phrase it that hiring more officers as our needs and population continues to grow?
I just
In
don't think we
proportion
should
to
put
that.
it in there because Sean, someone could interpret it. They could come back and say, okay, your population's increased. You didn't hire any officers. We're withholding your funding.
Gotcha.
Okay,
You're putting yourself in a box.
okay.
And
Chief,
my
I
other
have a question
Mike,
for Chief when you get a chance.
just one more follow-up on that. Just while you have you on that train of thought, Mr. Rowe, is this, how fluid is this resolution? I mean, can we make changes as we move forward, or are we making a commitment right now forever? And if we see that the needs change or something else changes in what we put in here, I mean, like if we said that we were going to have additional training in a specific field, and the needs change 2-3 years down the road, and we have a different population, can we amend this to accommodate the different situations, or are we putting something in stone right now that's going to be something we have to follow?
I believe we're bound to it because the mayor is signing the certification form.
Gotcha.
That's how I understand it.
We're bound to it, but that doesn't stop you as a council in imposing training or anything else you want to do in the future. It's unclear exactly how this is going to work in the future. He wanted a plan. It didn't say it was forever. It didn't say it was temporary. He wanted a plan by April 1st, and he wants it implemented. And that's what we're doing. Can we change anything down the road? Yes. If we say we passed a plan that says 30 hours of training, but now we want 50, we can still require our officers to get 50 hours of training. We don't have to amend the plan.
But can we repeal it back and say, all right, 30 was overly ambitious, perhaps as the situation arises, and since we've been through this for a year or 2 years, that we find that 25 hours is adequate?
It's unclear. There has been no direction from the governor.
Which is a little unfair to us.
It's, well, it's,
Totally unfair.
again, an unfunded state mandate.
Right. So I just want to go back up to recommendation 1. Mr. Rua, can you tell me exactly how you have it written?
Well, we haven't finished it yet, but basically, the council is going to adopt a plan to increase training for police officers up to 30 hours per year. Training to be determined by the chief of police.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, can you pull the council and make sure they're good with that?
Well, are we doing, we're gonna do it for each recommendation?
Yes, I just want to make sure we're all on board.
Sure. So those in favor of the increased recommendation for increased training, Newman,
Yes.
Cameron Danner,
Aye.
Rottenstrau,
Yes.
Mylum,
Aye.
Cook.
Aye. Okay, so then the second recommendation, the hiring of 4 more officers. So we have a recommendation to strike this or not approve that recommendation. Do we have any other thoughts, discussions? Mr. Newman?
I mean, it does say in here about, keeping proper staffing to use the sheriff's department and the troopers. So I'm just curious, Chief, what, that verbiage is kind of leaning towards, and is it even really a thing?
I don't really know that it's a thing, like we've used the examples I've given is we do work with the state police and the sheriffs. That tragedy at Tim Hortons, their arson investigators from the county came in. The tragic events of our homicide and the officers being shot, the sheriffs came in and conducted the investigation. So it had an outside review. So we already collaborate, I think, pretty much as we can with those specialized services.
So there's really nothing any more specific that they were leaning towards. I mean, obviously, if you bring in
I don't know.
investigators, that it will free up our guys anyway, so we can remain full staffed on shift. But I'm just curious if they were talking about anything else or
You'd
leaning
have to
towards
ask, I
anything.
wasn't a part of this, on the inner workings, so Sean might be able to give.
Sean, yeah,
Mike would.
I think there are kind of suggestions. And again, this leads to another one further down the line is this comes into educating, having the ambassador to the public from the police, somebody that kind of can educate people on this. And again, as we went through all of this, a lot of these things are already in place. A lot of these things are already part of the accreditation. A lot of these are part of their common procedure. For them to have the understanding that we do join forces with other agencies on a regular basis, it's already in there. Is it realistic to think that you can pull them in? And again, it circles back to Mike. This isn't a plan that's already in place. We don't have an open-ended thing to say, hey, we can't demand from the county sheriff or demand from the state troopers that, bring your people in here. So,
Right.
I think that still comes back to something we have to peel back.
Right.
It still goes into the consideration of it for as our population increases and with other things. But again, with so many unknowns, I don't think it's fair to commit to that from a budgetary standpoint or from a hiring standpoint for our officers, unfortunately.
I agree. And at any point, we can hire new officers and not be held down to it. I mean, as Sean, as you said, if our census increases or as the needs are increase in our community, we absolutely can hire. So what I think I'm hearing is that we would like to not include number 2 in our resolution, correct?
Well, just kind of as we're talking about it, and again, back to Mike, is there a way to phrasing it that, the council and the city will continue to monitor the needs of the community and the population in consideration of more officers upon needed? Or again, is that too committal?
I think it has to be a plan is what I'm hearing Mike say.
Right, Madam President. It has to be a plan. And Sean, what I was planning on doing for the last of the resolutions that we're putting in a clause, something to the effect of the Common Council agrees to periodically review the plan, the police reform plan, and make changes as necessary.
That's kind of what
Perfect.
I'm heading towards.
Okay, that's
perfect.
what I'm saving that for the end.
Perfect.
Finish on
Really
a high
led
note,
with
Mr.
that, Mike. Should really lead with that. That's a great piece to keep in mind.
Yeah,
Okay, so then, Mr. Clerk, if you could call the roll to removing number 2 and not including that in a resolution.
Okay,
So we're calling the roll to remove it.
Could not include it
To
in the
not adopt it.
resolution.
we're not going to include
Correct.
recommendation number 2 in our resolution.
Correct.
Newman,
Aye.
Cameron,
Aye.
Rautenstrau,
Aye.
Mylum,
aye.
Cook.
Aye. Okay, recommendation number 3, more diversity. The city will review and discuss the residency requirement to allow officers time to relocate into the city or allow officers to live outside the city after a required period of time.
The charter.
The city is also notating that the New York State Civil Service hiring and promotion system needs to be overhauled as it shows to be biased towards communities of color. The city is requesting for the state to review this governmental hiring process policy. Now, Sean, do you have any additional input into that?
And this is something that was talked about. I mean, we aren't we aren't a very diverse community. And with that comes, the diversity within our police force is comparable to that. It's commensurate to the diversity we have in our community. Should we have more of it? Probably. But, as we all know, we talk about, there's families that are policemen. There's families that continue to go into that field. Opening up that pool to more police officers from other areas, in effect, would probably increase the amount of diversity, racially through other communities. But the unfortunate part of that is, looking into it, the civil service hiring is pushed down from the state, is what our understanding was. So to open that up, I think we need to make a push back to them. I mean, speaking to other cities of similar size, we don't necessarily compare. It's really kind of hard to speak to that. The questionnaire that went out there, it kind of asked those questions and looked for some input on that. And unfortunately, we didn't find much input on it. And, that was something that I was kind of looking towards as well. Even the mention of it, if somebody was stepping up and speaking to that, I think it was important to take into consideration. But we really didn't have an outcry or a mention of an issue with racial diversity and a different treatment for people. That's not to say that it's not there. It is, and we should be conscientious of it. But I don't know what else we can put in there to open that up. Like you said, it comes down to civil service, it comes down to state regulations on that.
Now, civil service law is not my forte, so I'll defer to our civil service secretary. But Mr. Rua, is there anything that would prohibit us from adding to number 3 that we open up the exam? I thought that was a local decision.
I'm not sure, Madam President, I exactly understand your question. Currently, we have a policy that you have to be a resident of the city. And after that, we allow people to take the exams that aren't residents, and then they have a period of time to move into the city. So the exams are open to everyone, as far as I know.
So can I just comment on that quick?
Please.
Yes, of course.
That is a change, and it's a positive change. It used to be that you had to be a resident of the city at the time of the test, which really impacted our quantity of applicants. So now we've changed it, and anyone can take the test. Then within 30 days of being hired, they have to move into the city. Now, I'm a big proponent of having your officers live in the city. I think it makes them a part of the community, and I think it's just a good thing, and it should be. The reason we wanted that proactive part where they move into the city ahead of time is, that after 3 years, officers can leave to go to other departments. And my fear was that we could become the training ground for officers, where someone just say from Amherst always wanted to be in Amherst. Well, I'll take a shot at Tonawanda. Okay, I'll go there. They give me a year and a half to move in. I'll get an apartment. My roots are still in Amherst. And when that 3 years up, I'm going to apply to Amherst and let them take me because I'm certified and I got 3 years of experience in. I think that proactive part of moving into the city gives them that root, so to speak, that shows that they're really interested in being a part of this community. And so I feel personally that that's important. But you're the body. If you want to eliminate, you can. But the second part of what we did, we do have a test coming up in the next month or so. We've reached out to every school, college in the area that has a criminal justice program. I think you've already seen, we've reached out to other police departments that have put it on their Facebook pages. We've reached out to the BOCES program. So we really proactively put the exam announcement out there to let everyone know. We sent it out to the police academy.
Okay.
A couple departments that have part-time police officers. So that's the proactive part we took, but obviously it's up to you. If you folks want to eliminate residency, you could do that. And obviously it would probably increase your pool.
Well, I guess maybe to speak to that, Chief, is there a better suggestion as to how to increase the diversity. You just explained it great that you guys do a significant amount of recruitment. Is there anything that you could suggest to kind of address that a little bit better, or to kind of ratify or quantify that as part of this? Expanding
Telling
the area,
everybody what a wonderful community this is and they want to come live here.
which goes back to one of the last ones, is kind of have a community outreach, an ambassador to the residents. But maybe expand that to, as somebody that could talk or volunteer to speak at on your behalf or with you, to other colleges or schools where they have criminal justice, where people could be going to school with the intention of becoming police officers, correct?
Yes. And COVID's changed a lot. You know, we haven't been able to do anything. We used to go to the college fairs and different things. But the hard part is, unless there's an exam coming up, our exam usually, the results stay active for 4 years. So we got to hit them now with this new test coming up, because it'll stay in effect for 4 years.
Gotcha.
So it's not something, we'd really be productive on a yearly basis. We go out to NCC next year and tell them in 3 years the test is coming. We're kind of spinning our wheels, but we've never done what we've done this time to try to get the word out, to get as many people to take the exam as possible. And quite frankly, many of the kids taking the exam don't realize that they have to be on our list. I get resumes all the time saying they've just come out and graduated pre-employment, and how do I get hired? And it's like, unless you're on our list, there's nothing we can do. So that's why we went this route this time.
John, have you spoken to the Civil Service Secretary?
We did have some conversations in here, not any specifics. I think I forwarded to the rest of the committee. I may have forwarded to what she gave me an outline of the requirements for hiring police officers. Off the top of my head, I don't have it, and I probably should have had that handy to speak to this part.
Okay.
Should we call a vote on this one?
So the vote that we're accepting,
I'm personally, from what the chief said, I don't think this needs to be amended.
we're already doing.
Adopted.
We're already doing it, so
Right.
my vote would be to strike this one.
Okay.
That would be
So,
an agreement.
okay. So, we have, so Mr. Milam is suggesting that we do not include number 3 in our resolution. Mr. Clerk, if you can call the roll.
Newman,
Aye.
again, this is for not including number 3.
Right.
Cameron Danner,
Aye.
Rautenstrau,
Aye.
Mylum,
Aye, and I just want to speak to that, and I want this to be clear that I'm not against diversifying the department, but it sounds like there's more stringent measures in place that already address this taking place. So having this in there would be a redundancy. So that's why I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah,
And-
I agree.
Aye is my vote.
Ben Cook.
Aye. And to that, I am concerned, because the committee said that, the city is also notating that the New York State Civil Service hiring and promotion system needs to be overhauled as it shows to be biased towards communities of color. I guess I would love to know more information on that. So Mr. Rautenstrau, maybe we can connect at some point and just talk about that.
No, and that's definitely something worth it, having a little more information on, and possibly adding as an addendum as we go down to the road. As Mike said, we can add
Right.
to that and speak more to it.
That could be added to number 5, I think. More collaboration with outside services.
Yeah.
All right, number 4, more community engagement and educating the public. The city through public events, youth and recreation programs, COPDs, own events, and, we're moving. own events and school events will begin to engage more with the community, the residents and visitors. The city will consider using on a more constant basis a social media platform to engage and educate the community in practices and policies the department is already accomplishing or offering. So Sean, do you have any additional insight on this?
Again, it goes back to, and that's what I was referring to, and I keep circling back to, is just the reaching out to the people, educating them on what our police officers do, getting them to know. We talk a lot about they're connecting with them as kids. I mean, I think that's why our school resource officer is vital to this whole program, to reaching out and getting to know, getting our residents to know who our police are and what they do, and to continue that as they get older. I mean, it's going to start there. It's going to grow as people grow and as people become adults in our community and homeowners and stay here. And I think there's a way to be an ambassador, to be out there and constantly have that open communication. We talk about too, about having more events to get our officers out there and intermingling with the public, and just to find better ways to do that. They used to do the coffee with your policemen and the certifying of bikes, bicycles for the kids, and just more events and more of a presence in our community, even more on a social basis.
Okay. Chief, what are your thoughts to this recommendation?
It's community policing at its finest. I have no issues with it at all.
So how can we enhance that and put that into our plan?
Well,
We have a social media platform. I shouldn't say we, the police department has the social media page.
I don't think you change it. I think you just leave it as is.
Yeah, I mean, we do everything currently. The only thing that we don't have is an ambassador, but we're working on putting that in place.
Agreed.
Okay, so we leave number 4 as written.
Correct.
absolutely.
I agree.
Not a plan though.
Now, Mr. Rua, will that work? The city will consider using on a more constant basis a social media platform. Will that work in our plan?
It's not really a plan. I mean, how would you enforce that? If you had to enforce it, how would you enforce it? So for instance, if you wanted to say the police department will establish a Facebook page, you either have a page or you don't, but how can you enforce we intend to do more community events? It's not really a plan. It's a goal, but it's not a plan. The governor's looking for specific plans with this executive order. And that's going to go, I think those type of things are going to be with the community outreach program. So if you establish a community outreach program to have improved relationships with the City of Tonawanda Police Department and city residents, to include such things as events and social media platforms, it would be better because you're establishing the program. That's a plan.
Or developing a policy to better utilize social media, better utilize social events to be more involved in there.
Be more proactive.
Now that's more of a proactive thing. You're developing a policy to do these things and kind of
Right.
putting that.
So and then how would you enforce that? They would say, well, let me see the policy. And you would show them the policy and you've complied with the plan.
Yes. So to kind of rephrase it that way is what you're suggesting, Mike?
Yes.
Then yes.
Absolutely.
Establish a policy. We'll have to flesh these out in a couple minutes.
So what are you, so establishing a policy.
To better utilize social media, more engagement in events, city sponsored events.
The city will maintain a current and updated presence on social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter.
Should better.
Reference West Seneca Police's Twitter account.
Twitter.
Chief, what are your thoughts on that, establishing a policy?
Who's establishing the policy? The council? That would just be or is the police department establishing a policy?
I think it would kind of go back to you, Chief, on or within your department to kind of develop a policy to better utilize those things, to increase the presence on events and things that are happening in the city, and finding a way to do
Better
that.
utilize social media platforms.
Assign a social media officer. But I mean, within realistic goals. I mean, obviously, you can't have a dedicated police officer running the Twitter page and Facebook page, but to kind of get that information out there and use it. I mean, I noticed you guys do have a page, and just to increase the usage of it.
Okay, so, Mr. Clerk, if you could, go around the room and call the roll on this. We're establishing a policy, to enhancing social media, utilizing city events, et cetera.
Okay, Newman.
Aye.
Cameron,
Aye.
Rautenstrau,
Aye.
Mylum,
Aye.
Cook.
Aye. Okay, number 5, more collaboration with outside services. The city will begin to update partnerships with outside services as well as look within the community for residents who have experienced connections and training in particular areas of need. Sean, any additional insight on this? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
I think that, and I'm kind of refreshing my memory on this one as well. I don't know if Lindsay's out there and might want to speak to this one more specifically, but I think working with other services, working with other, which again, I know we do. We do work with social services when the need arises, partnering with these places and using them more consistently is, I think, where it was going. Actually, I think Lindsay can kind of speak to this a little more if she's out there on there.
Hi, this is Lindsay. So one of the things that we found when we were meeting with the subcommittees was that we have some retired individuals in the area who have worked with particular groups, for example, homeless, and they've been an advocate for 20 odd years in the homeless community, and they're within our community and still volunteer to do those things. So that could be a resource that we tap into and just have that connection of someone within the city to quickly go to and maybe just have that connection with that resident to kind of help move along the process and just help that individual. So again, it was really just finding who may have those experiences or that background, who may be willing to, jump in if ever need for it, or simply just updating and making sure contact information is correct for different organizations, seeing if there are new organizations that have started, because we all know that new organizations start fairly often in the Western New York area because we're great working with neighbors. So just kind of making sure we have all of that information updated and easily available.
Great. Chief, anything additional?
I guess my suggestion would kind of be to combine that with the Goodwill Ambassador Committee, maybe. Because I'm not sure how, as Mr. Ruiz pointed out, we can,
Right.
what are we doing with that? So am I reaching out to citizens? Where's the liability with that? I mean, it's wonderful that people that worked in homeless shelters want to volunteer, but what kind of, we have to go through certified places where maybe if these volunteers were part of that Goodwill Ambassador Committee and a resource there that they could help with the formation of that committee, but I don't know how I could meet this. I don't know how we would implement it or use it so that it's effective for the people volunteering and for the officers.
Correct.
Hey, guys, just to throw this out there, I know that the fire department uses the chaplains as a pretty solid resource for items like this when people go through a fire. You know, they have those established channels of getting people the help that they need. Would it be a way, could we look towards that group of folks, the chaplains, to kind of supplement this and, like the chief was saying, be part of that Goodwill Ambassador Committee? I mean, they're there. They come to the, you know, anytime there's a house fire or something in need, can we check into deploying them for, you know, police calls that might have that type of need?
We do that already with Pastor Chief.
Okay.
We were actually already use him quite a bit.
Okay.
If he needs it. So we are doing that already.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
I believe we're also, you know, if we're already hooked up with crisis services, we are also working with the Child Advocacy Center of Erie County as well, I believe. And they have a lot of resources available, including counseling, I believe. That right, Chief?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we also, I mean, if our officers come across the homeless individual, we have two different avenues that, you know, we can seek out, and that's the Homeless Alliance of Western New York. And if they're a veteran, then the Veterans One Stop Center, in order to try to get them housing. And I mean, those have been implemented for years. So
This is reinventing the wheel then.
yeah.
To an extent, maybe getting that information out there that those resources are available.
Yeah, that could be combined with the social.
The Goodwill Ambassador Committee, yes.
And
Right.
social
I
media,
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
promotion of our services, senior services, crisis services. So what does the council think with this recommendation?
I think number 5 is unnecessary. We can group it in with number 7 as we talked, and some parts of it.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, it is a little
I'm-
repetitive to that.
Yeah, I would just change that the city will update and maintain partnerships with outside services and add that to the last one. And then that's part of your plan.
so, what I'm hearing is that we're proposing that we not add number 5, but take, that thought process per se and add it to number 7. Is that what we're suggesting?
Does seem more appropriate to kind of merge it with it.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Clerk, did you get all that?
So we're merging number 5 recommendation in with the Goodwill Ambassador Committee.
Right, making, that's the expectation for the Goodwill Ambassador Committee. Okay, so with that understanding, Mr. Casso, can you call the roll?
So again, we're not incorporating recommendation number 5, we're including in and expanding that into the Goodwill Ambassador Committee.
Correct.
Those in favor, Newman,
Aye.
Cameron,
Aye.
Rautenstrau,
Aye.
Mylum,
Aye.
Cook.
Aye. Okay, on recommendation number 6, more resources for officer well-being. The city will consider additional opportunities and programs for officers to become better equipped to handle the daily stress of police work that, when ignored, can cause for burnout, depression, and physical ailments. Chief Resilience Officer. Mr. Rauenstra, do you have anything to add to this?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If Lindsay wants to add more onto that, I'd welcome you to that.
And just in the research, I believe it's New Jersey that actually does employ this process, this policy, and they've had great success with just having someone in charge of just making sure that everything that an officer would need to do the job on the emotional side of things and physical is there, and they just have someone that kind of oversees it all and make sure it's available.
Great, thank you. Chief, do you have anything additional?
I guess I just keep going back to what Mr. Ruiz says. It's a great thing, but it's not a plan. So,
Right.
I mean, something you could do is say, we mandate each officer to sit down with the department chaplain for 1 hour every year. That's, I can do and document and everything else, you know. There are resources out there and I think it's important, but I don't.
This is not what they had in mind for reparations.
And we have the Employee Assistance Program, correct?
Yep.
And we have a poster in the department for the EAP.
Yep. And we have a service that's police only, that's help for them, that they talk with another police officer in case they're worried about confidentiality. There's also Catch a Falling Star through Cindy Goss that's available that we utilized during the shooting with the officers. So that's what I mean. I think it's everybody's worried about officers' health at this point on the mental side. But if you want to institute it, I think that's basically what you have to tell me, that you want them to be mandated to sit down. I can't say a training because I don't know if there will be these trainings, but you know, or sit down for 1 hour a year with a mental health. That's what you'd have to do to make it a plan that we can say, yes, we met that plan.
Sean?
Yes.
Pastor Chifa was in on these meetings, right?
Yes.
Did he offer any additional insight on to number 6?
Just as far as offering the services of you know, the local churches and his instruction, and finding more ways to do that. That's kind of where that circled around. You know, I do agree with the chief. I mean, mandating a certain amount of hours is probably the way to go, or working with the service to bring somebody out here. I guess I'm not sure how to rephrase that into a kind of a mandate. I mean, you're not telling these guys to take spa days or anything, but I think there's a real concern about their mental well-being, and how that affects other people that they're taking care of, or they're working with in the community. So if there's a better way to address that, or to speak to that above and beyond what resources that are already there.
Bill or Rick, I have a question for one of you or the both of you. Given the fact that we have the EAP as a resource, can we include in our plan that we reach out, or that EAP will come to City Hall and meet with our officers, you know, an exercise that, you know, at least once a year? Or is that above and beyond the resource that we have with them?
I think they come in as an as needed basis. I actually like the chief's idea of mandating, you know, each officer to sit down with the police chaplain for 1 hour once a year. I mean, that's something that and I think we all know Pastor Chifa. You know, he's a wonderful person and a great resource that you know, our fire department utilizes, and you know, I'd like to see us possibly utilize him a little bit more on the police side. And then, you know, based on, you know, maybe that one meeting a year with Pastor Chifa, you know, he can report back to the chief and see if additional EAP resources might be needed, without kind of breaking
Yeah,
some sort of confidentiality. And then you could even throw in there, you know, during periods like with the shooting last May, you could throw in there that, you know, the people, and I don't know if they were mandated to sit down with somebody, and the chief can kind of speak to that a little bit more, but, you know, we can mandate that, you know, during an event like that, that all the officers involved are mandated to sit down for at least one session with a, you know, a psychologist or EAP or our chaplain or whatever.
I agree. We should
I
make
agree.
something. And maybe we should keep it open too and add, you know, an additional name besides, you know, Pastor Chifa, just in case he's not available.
I agree with you.
Or-
I would leave it totally names out of it because what
Right.
if he's not there in a year, or what
right.
if maybe somebody for whatever reason doesn't like Pastor Chief, or that there's a mental health professional we can use. I would just leave it.
Right.
If you want it, just
Just say
mandate
that they should have like a one year. Yeah.
1 hour a year.
Yeah.
It will be
Yep.
somebody at the chief's discretion, or however you generically do that. Yeah, we don't want names or a specific
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
Perfect.
They can choose who they
Yes.
want to go to. If they want to see their own doctor, maybe they're already seeing somebody, that's their discretion. Because then you fall under that HIPAA law too, I believe, correct?
Well, that's why I kind of kept it, you know, open as far as, you know, if people went and talked to, whether it's the police/fire chaplain or whomever, then that person reports back to the chief and says, hey, you know, without getting into specifics, you know, it'd be a good idea to get EAP or to catch a falling star or, you know, whomever it is into the department to speak to, you know, the officers and, you know, go from there.
Perfect.
Yep.
I think we can segue into that. So for number 6, Mr. Rue, if you're still with us here.
I am.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So we can word it as, you know, 1 hour once a year, a chaplain or a designee of the chief of police will meet with, you know, officers at least 1 hour once a year.
I think a minimum of 1 hour per year. might
Yeah.
be-
I agree.
Yeah, minimum, because it might 2 hours.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you might need a
You know,
lot more
whatever
than
their
that.
need might be.
Sure.
Yeah,
Right, good
depending on what their
points.
need is.
Okay. So, Mr. Clerk, can you call the roll?
Yeah, this is for recommendation number 6 with regards to offering more resources
Use their numbers.
to the officer.
Correct.
Newman,
Aye.
Cameron Danner,
Aye.
Rautenstrau,
Aye.
Mylum,
Aye.
Cook.
Aye. Okay, recommendation number 7, the Goodwill Ambassador Committee. The city will consider creating a Goodwill Ambassador Committee that will be open to the public to join, interview for, and participate in order to act as a liaison between the COPD and the community. Mr. Rautenstrau, do you have anything additional?
I think that's probably the most important takeaway from this entire process and this exercise. I think, you know, based on the suggestions that the community had and a lot of these things that are already in place, I think it's important to educate the public on the things that are out there, on the things that our police do, what their job is, and keep that open line of communication. I think the best way to do that is, you know, relying on the volunteers, relying on people willing to work as that liaison between the public and the the police department. You know, I think the chief has said it before. It comes down to somebody being the person that can speak to it, that knows enough about it. It may seem a little more disingenuous when it comes from our police chief or our police department to say, hey, we're awesome and we do everything great. You know, I think somebody doing their due diligence and coming from the public that's not specifically related to the police department is the best way to go. And I think if there's volunteers out there and there's people willing to do that, you know, I think there's people within the police reform committee that would be willing to play a part in this as well.
I agree, Sean.
Chief, do you have anything additional?
I think it was a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic way to go. Just to echo on what Sean said, you know, I can go to any meeting and of course they're going to think, of course, what's the chief of police going to say? Got the greatest department in the world. I think having these folks come in, and I think it was eye-opening for them too, to realize how much we really do. And if we can get a committee that can go out and talk, I realize how much fabulous.
Okay.
I think just to add on to that, I think, you know, just from my own experience, and I think most of us sitting here as part of the council, until we're actually sitting here and work directly with our police department and all of our departments, I don't think any of us, as a regular resident, as a regular a citizen, has an understanding of what their jobs involve, what they do, and even sometimes what their purpose is in our community. And I think when it comes down to that education, I think it's vital. And I just circle back to, I think this is probably one of the most important takeaways from this.
Lindsay, did you have anything additional?
Just when we went through the survey, a lot of the comments that people were making came right back to the educating. They didn't know we've been doing body cams, that they've been available since 2015. You know, they didn't realize that there is a school resource officer. They didn't realize that different services were available, like the underwater team, and that they do patrol the bike paths and so forth. Like, just so many of the comments were just not knowing, including us on the committee. We learned that some of these things are in fact being done, and we had no idea of it. Even with writing that report that you have, or that review, it was the same idea. A lot of that information, as a citizen, we had no idea. So I think that it goes hand in hand. It just helps everyone in the community understand what is happening, what has been happening, and just that open door of communication.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So the city will appoint a Goodwill Ambassador Committee no later than question mark
August.
I was thinking December, but what do you?
August 1st. I mean, that's, or at
I
least
would
have
go
it
into the
by then.
the pandemic.
December 31st.
I mean, we can always appoint it, but put a date out that's a little bit further and get on it, get it done, but, you know, just have a definite end date. That way it's
No,
with the
wait.
other.
I think you need a finite date.
So what if we said December 1st? I mean, I agree with the mayor's point, you know, with the pandemic.
That's fine. I mean, I think we can start it, right? As long as
Oh,
it's,
absolutely. We can get word out that, and since it's a committee, it would be appointed by the common council.
well, that's what's in the charter.
Right.
And are we
Okay.
limiting it to the amount of committee members?
I say, let's see what we get back.
I mean, I
Yeah,
think
I
it's a
think it-
great idea. We need to get the public involved, you know, and let them know what's going on in our police force, that they're just not sitting in a car or going to a donut shop, which they obviously are not doing. They're actually out patrolling our neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think there needs to be
Yeah, I think,
limitations on what their duties are. I think we've had this
Right.
discussion in the past. And I think it needs to be somewhat outlined. I think some of the onus needs to be on us to give the scope of what we want this to be. And I think we need the input. I hope that there's continual involvement by the members of the police reform committee, and I think the council and I think the police department should all be involved with this, as well as the council and the mayor's office, to really brainstorm on how to use this most efficiently and how to use this as a tool to communicate with our public and to educate the public,
Absolutely, Sean.
and to keep an open ground for that communication with each other. I mean, it was great to have this committee and to get the input from the community. 300 people is a lot of people that responded, but I think as this keeps going, and to keep that momentum going, is to continue to get that input from the people and deviate it as we need to, add to this whole thing. Like I said, this can be a living and breathing type document that we can add to it as the occasion rises, as trends kind of show, as situations change.
Would it be wise to establish the committee pre-budget cycle versus post-budget cycle? Just in case there may be something that arises through the committee that might help us budget for the following year.
Yeah, I think that would be wise, Tom. We want to get all those factors in place.
So then we would say by November 1st, the city will appoint a goodwill ambassador no later than November 1st.
Do you want to back it up a little more, like October 1st?
I would say, yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, we can do October 1st.
Yeah, they're not gonna have time if they are getting any type of feedback from the public, and it will affect their budget for 2022.
You maybe want to
and
do
You
September.
want to have some time to force it.
Yeah. And just to speak to that too, I think, we had a lot of outreach and we had a lot of people offering to help as well. We had additional volunteers that went into subcommittees, and we talked about more specific things to add to this. But I think there's people that want to extend their help in other ways. And we should take them up on that. I think there's probably a lot more out there than we expect, at least, or maybe I'm just being hopeful, but from the communications that we got and the people that reached out to the committee, I think they're out there. And if we start now, we should be able to have something together by October and make decisions that, could affect the budget or could be worked into it.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah. So we want to do October 1st?
Do you think
yes.
October 1st is enough time? Yeah.
Yeah, oh, totally. Mr. Clerk, did you get that?
Yep. Establishing the Goodwill Ambassador Committee by October 1st, 2021.
Correct. Can you please call the roll?
Newman,
Aye.
Himmerdiner,
Aye.
Rautenstrau,
Aye.
Mylum,
Aye.
Cook.
Aye. Okay, recommendation number 8, availability to different types of equipment. The city will consider additional and different types of non-lethal force tools and equipment to help the COPD effectively and safely to do their job. Mr. Rauenstrow, anything additional to add?
I think there's looking into equipment used by other communities, other police forces, just, the things like ropes that tie you up, non-lethal means, I think they need to pursue more of those. I don't know how, again, we're talking about our community and how it affects us. When you're looking at communities where there's been bigger issues and more chaos, I think that comes more into play. So I think that's just a concern, a preemptive concern. We've had one shooting event and our police force handled it amazingly and very professionally. They didn't lethally take down the perpetrator, and we did a great job of it. You want to keep that up. I think that's something worth considering. But again, now seeing it in this format and as we talk about it, how do you put that into a plan? I could acquiesce or look for the chief's input as far as what we're doing with that, what the police force does use, as far as non-lethal force tools.
Chief, anything additional?
Yeah, I just jump on that again, you know, if something comes up, we're constantly looking at improving in new technologies, and, you know, if something came up that we needed, I would come to the council and say, there's a cost with that, but this is it. I think you don't want to pigeon yourselves into committing to something. I mean, unless you have a specific tool that you're looking for, it's a goal, but it's not a plan that you can submit to the governor. So,
Right.
and I would tell you that I constantly am reviewing that and taking input from my officers. And if something came up that I couldn't do in my budget, I would certainly come to the council and say, this is a tool I think we need, and can we find funding for it? So,
But as it stands right now, you don't see an immediate need for something to that effect right now.
no.
Okay.
Unless you just put in that the City of Tonawanda will continue to actively, I don't know, research non-lethal tools and equipment.
But that's not a plan,
Well, we will actively research it.
but that's nothing different than what we're doing right now.
Considering is something different.
I agree.
Personally, I wouldn't get us boxed in. I would just, I think
Mhm.
that's one that you don't.
And again, this circles back to that education. That is something our police department does, and we've been lucky to have, you know, a good leader in the department that does continue to do this. Is it a matter of policy that you do that? Maybe put a policy into place, you know, develop a policy of continual research on it. I mean, if you're gonna quantify an actual plan or a policy, which, you know, may or may not be a good idea. Again, I'm just kind of spitballing there. I think this is something we are actively doing. I don't know that we need to put a plan into effect on it, nor do we have you know, examples of a need for that in our community at this point. That I think we handle it already. Not to say that, you know, we're already out there shooting to kill. I think our officers do a great job of mitigating risk and de-escalating circumstances as they arise.
I agree. I think,
we should
mean,
strike it.
yeah, it's kind of, it's like almost a job description type of thing.
Yeah.
Where, you know, we also don't want to be micromanaging the police department on issues that we don't have any business telling them what to do, or I mean, any micromanaging. This is something I'd rather leave to the professionals and let them tell us what they need.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a proposal to not include that in the resolution. Mr. Clerk, did you get that?
Mr. Clerk, you're on mute.
Yep, we're not including, this is for recommendation number 8. We are not
Correct.
including recommendation 8 in our plan.
Okay, so can you call the roll?
Newman?
Aye.
Cameron
Aye.
Rautenstrau,
Aye.
Mylum,
Aye.
Cook.
Aye. Okay, Mr. Rua, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Those were all the recommendations, correct? Mr. Rautenstrau?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Rua? Okay, Mr. Rua, are you still with us?
Oh,
I don't see him on there.
Jim, did we lose him?
yep.
There he
he's
is.
coming
I
on.
see him.
No.
Back in.
Okay. Sorry, we lost you there for a minute.
Maybe you ran.
Okay,
Okay, so Mr. Rua, number 8, we are not including in the resolution.
That is correct. We finished the resolution and gave it to Mr. Casa.
Oh, okay.
okay, so I'm sharing the resolution that we had until Mike came up with the recommendations. So I have the resolution up out there and I will go over the additional, now therefore it be resolved. So again, just so that everyone has this information. So we'd go through all the whereases and then now therefore it be resolved that the Common Council of the City of Tonawanda hereby adopts and intends to implement the following police reform measures. Number one, increase police officer training up to 30 hours per year with the type of training to be determined by the Chief of Police. Number two, establish a policy by the City of Tonawanda Police Department to better utilize social media platforms to engage and educate the community. Number three, mandate each police officer to meet with the chaplain or designee of the chief for a minimum of 1 hour each year. Number four, establish a community goodwill ambassador committee to improve relationships with the City of Tonawanda Police Department and the city residents and maintain relationships with outside services and agencies to be established by October 1st, 2021. Number five, the Common Council agrees to periodically review and amend the police reform plan to conform to the community needs.
Perfect.
Can I just throw something in? Am I still on?
Yes, you're still here.
The first one, it said up to 30 hours, which means you're putting the maximum at 30 hours. I think you want it to say a minimum of 30 hours.
Yes.
Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
That's correct.
Increase police officer training with a minimum of 30 hours per year.
That's what you wanted, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Taking it up 20 to 30, that's what I said up to, but yeah, minimum.
Okay. So number one would be increase police officer training with a minimum of 30 hours per year with the type of training to be determined by the Chief of Police.
Yes.
Anything else for the discussion? Now, Jim, you have everything that you need to finish the resolution, correct?
Yes, like I said, I can read the resolution and then we can take a vote on it. If that's what you'd like,
Please.
President.
Please.
Okay, whereas New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo issued an executive order on June 12, 2020, requiring all governments in the state to adopt a policing reform plan. And whereas pursuant to the said executive order, the mayor of the City of Tonawanda formed a police reform committee comprised of local officials and residents to review and propose recommendations to the Common Council to improve public safety and restore and strengthen the mutual trust between the police force and the community. And whereas the Police Reform Committee held numerous meetings, conducted a public survey, and held a public hearing to gather information and data in order to submit recommendations to the Common Council for police reform. And whereas the Police Reform Committee has, after reviewing all of the collected information and taken into consideration the public input, has developed a police reform plan and has submitted these recommendations to the Common Council for review. Whereas it should be noted that the City of Tonawanda Police Department has followed and implemented high standards of policing procedures and has been accredited by the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services since 1991. And whereas the City of Tonawanda Police Department has one of the first local police departments to be so accredited, and is recertified every 5 years by the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services in order to maintain such certification. And whereas the City of Tonawanda Common Council, after listening to the committee's presentation and reviewing the submitted recommendations and taking into consideration the accreditation of the City of Tonawanda Police Department, has to adopt and implement the following proposals. Now therefore be resolved that the Common Council of the City of Tonawanda hereby adopts and intends to implement the following police reform measures. Number 1, increase police officer training with a minimum of 30 hours per year, with the type of training to be determined by the Chief of Police. Number 2, establish a policy by the City of Tonawanda Police Department to better utilize social media platforms to engage and educate the community. Number 3, mandate each police officer to meet with the chaplain or designee of the chief for a minimum of 1 hour each year. Number 4, establish a community goodwill ambassador committee to improve relationships with the City of Tonawanda Police Department and the city residents, and maintain relationships with outside services and agencies to be established by October 1st, 2021. Number 5, Common Council agrees to periodically review and amend the police reform plan to conform to the community's needs.
I mean, I think this goes without saying, but council sponsors?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay. Comments or questions? I have a comment. This goes without saying, but I want to thank the Police Reform Committee for their efforts on this. Because of their efforts, they helped bring this change into our community, and I appreciate all that they did beginning in August and until today. I certainly hope that they stay on as goodwill ambassadors, but we certainly appreciate all that you've done. I want to thank the chief for his input as well. And Mr. Rua and Ms. Pemberthy, if you're still on, I thank you both for helping put this resolution together for us tonight so we can adopt it prior to April 1st. So my hat's off to everybody. It's a total team effort here. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Comment?
Madam President,
Mr. Olmsted?
not to be redundant, but I agree 100% with Madam President. Thank you to all the committee that were involved, to Mike Rua and Brittany Penberthy for your work on the legal side of this, and the chief for your input. I want to extend an additional thanks also, to the community that engaged themselves. They got involved. They gave the input to this community, so they had something to go on. It's a constant struggle to get that kind of involvement. And it was great to have that. Thanks to the rest of the council. I know this has been going back and forth. I kind of lost track of how much of it I already had in front of me and how much was you guys had. So I appreciate your patience with some of the going back and forth on this to get it in there. I'd like to say a special thanks to Lindsay Jelski. I think she really worked hard on the final piece of this, finalizing this package to present to you, to really put it into a comprehensive package that included everything that the committee talked about. She went above and beyond with the rest of the committee, and I just want to, extend our thanks to her as well for the work you did on this. And that was it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Comment, please.
Mr. Newman?
I too wanted to just pretty much reiterate what everybody else is saying. This report was outstanding. It was very well assembled and detailed, and the committee did a great job. And again, a lot of hours. This kind of stuff is daunting, but they were committed, and I also want to thank the public for being as involved as they were as well. it's an important factor. You know, this is a lot of great work. Like Brittany too, your input is very valued. And Sean did a, you know, great job as liaison. That's all I have.
Thank you,
Thank you,
John.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, Madam President, I too just want to say thanks, community, for stepping up, showing, you know, your input to the committee that had
Really
put
quickly,
hours
Madam
into
President.
this. With that, thank you very much, guys, for your time, and, you know, let's move forward. Hopefully we can see you guys again as the Goodwill Ambassadors with us. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you, Mrs. Cameron. Mr. Mylum?
Yeah, just very quickly, again, you know, I thanked everybody at the beginning. I thank you again. I would just like to point out too, how nice it is that many of these things that are recommendations have already been done, and have been being done by our department for quite a long time. So I think it speaks to the level of professionalism that our police department has, the hard work from the chief, and it's an honor to have this type of department in our city that is really, when you're looking at it, extremely progressive in the way that they view training and keeping our officers safe mentally and healthy and going forward. So just thank you for everything.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Newman,
Aye.
Cameron Danner,
Aye.
Rautenstrau,
Aye.
Mylum,
Aye.
Cook.
I declare the resolution adopted. With that said, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Madam President.
Seconded by Ms. Cameron. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks,
Everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Great work.